Ladies and gentlemen, inductee George Blackie Heath. Young George Heath, all dressed up with his sister Helen from their childhood days down in Pineapple, Alabama. As a 6th grader, he was manager for the Pineapple Wilcox County team. His first year of football was as a 7th grader. He played guard, weighed in at 86 pounds. In high school, he was a 5-year letterman in football, baseball, basketball, track, and swimming. He came to Guntersville in 1940 because the assistant coach Clyde White had moved from Pineapple. Coach White told the Marshall County High School coach Henry Lee Burgett about this young halfback named George Heath. George had played at Moore Academy in Pineapple. A job was secured for his father, and the family moved to Guntersville, Alabama. Guntersville had an independent team in 1939-40 that scored over 100 points in a game. This was in an era when 25 to 30 points was a respectable score and often the winning score. The team was called the Trojans. They were originated and sponsored by Bucky Copeland about 1937. Among the first players were Tiny Burdette, Willard Collins, Boyd Smith, Beeson Pendleton, Cotton Lay, and J.P. Roden. The Trojans continued playing through World War II and for a time after the war with different players and different sponsors. The squad with the best record was the 1939-40 group, which won 24 and lost 4. On the front row, left to right, Blackie Heath, Willard Collins, the manager and player, and Truman Kinnemer. On the back row, left to right, first is Coach Clyde White, the coach that brought Blackie and his family to Guntersville. Next is Edward Big Ed Aldridge, J.P. Roden, and Howard Duke Windsor. They played other county teams as well as Jacksonville State and semi-pro teams from Birmingham, Attala, and Chattanooga. They lost both games to Jacksonville, one by a single point, and the other 2 losses were to semi-pro teams in tournaments. The Trojans played their home games in the gym at the old high school on the hill where the elementary school is now. The gym burned in the 1940s and was built back in the same place. It's the gym at the Guntersville Elementary School. In the book, Guntersville Remembered by Catherine Duncan and Larry Smith, it's pointed out that no effort was spared to lure good athletes to play here at Marshall County High School. In the early 1940s, several players were drafted from Nixon's Chapel, Union Grove, and other communities to participate in sports here. Since there was no other suitable place for the players to stay, some of them lived in the jail under the watchful guidance of Sheriff Zeke Boyles. Among those residing at the jail were Nelson Williams of Union Grove, Med Bartlett, Thurl Scruggs, and Flash Gordon, just to mention a few. Nelson Williams, following World War II, would go on to play with Blackie at Jacksonville State. We asked Nelson about living in the old county jail.
Living in the jail was quite an experience. We weren't in a cell, but the old jail had, on the 3rd floor, it had what they call a hospital area. It's just an open space. There was a couple of cells up there, but they hardly ever used them. And we lived in that hospital part of the jail, and Zeke and Miss Eva were just like a mother and father to us.
Wildcat players would go with Sheriff Zeke on bootlegger raids on Sand Mountain.
Zeke would say, "Well, I will keep you boys in shape." And if we went out with him, of course, we had a little deputy's card in our pocket, and we'd run moonshiners down, and then when we caught one or come in the jail, they'd pay us a couple of bucks for turnkey fee, they called it. And that was assessed to the prisoner, the bootlegger.
Of course, years later, Zeke Boyles was killed in the line of duty as the Marshall County Sheriff. Now, Blackie was on the last Wildcat team to play at the old fairgrounds located north of where Kinnemer Livestock Barn was located on Lovelace Street, down near the levee. And the next year, you and some of the younger Wildcats would play in that new 850-seat stadium between the high school and the elementary school. It was dedicated in September of 1941. The 1940 Wildcat season culminated with a 7-2 record, with a team holding all 3 county rivals scoreless. In 1941, a team of Alabama All-Stars played a team from Tennessee over in Decatur. High school coaches Shorty Ogle and Jim Glover teamed up with Alabama's Paul Burnham and Auburn's Jimmy Hitchcock against the Tennessee players and coaches. George Heath scored a touchdown in a 12-0 victory and averaged 50 yards per punt. Tennessee's Union College coaches noticed the outstanding talent of young George, and they soon had him signed up for the season of 1941. The coach could not remember his name, so the coach just called him Blackie because of his thick, wavy black hair. Blackie considers the time at Union under a group of college coaches that had played for General Bob Neyland at Tennessee was some of the best coaching of his career. The 1942 to 1945 war years were spent in the U.S. Navy building and maintaining a 2-mile B-29 airstrip and other airfields and roads in Okinawa and Guadalcanal. After his naval career, which included a 20-month stay on Guadalcanal, the young man resumed school and football at Jacksonville State University. Don Salls was his coach in 1946 when Blackie became Jacksonville State's first All-American football player. From the undefeated 1947 Jacksonville State Gamecocks, Jacksonville's first unbeaten, here is Captain George Blackie Heath, halfback, All-American, Jacksonville State University. Teammate from Gunnersville, Ernest Newman, a guard. This is the same Ernest Banny Newman that would later serve as principal at Marshall County High School, Gunnersville, and become Gunnersville's first city schools superintendent. The coaches left to right, head coach Don Salls from the University of Alabama, where he had served as line coach, backfield coach C.C. Dillon of the University of Illinois, and Ray Dirty Wedgeworth from Birmingham Southern and Gunnersville. Blackie led the 1948 Gamecocks to within a point of a second perfect season and beat Troy State in Pensacola's Paper Bowl. Heath, as the Gamecock punter, averaged 39.6 at a time when statisticians subtracted 20 yards each time a punt went into the end zone, a rule that no longer exists. We're back with Nelson Williams, a player at Marshall County High School with Blackie Heath and then at Jacksonville State. Nelson, we've shown a picture of Banny Newman. Remember Banny? What about the coaches Don Salls, Dirty Wedgeworth, and C.C. Dillon? What are your memories of these folks?
Well, they were good coaches. I really liked Coach Wedgeworth because he's a local Gunnersville boy. Went to high school here, and Dirty was a real good coach, and he's as good a scout as I've ever seen him.
We asked Nelson Williams about Blackie Heath.
Blackie was as good a high school back as you want to see anywhere. He was a smart football player. He was very quiet. He didn't carry on. He didn't showboat any. Mm-hmm. And Blackie was a perfect gentleman.
Now we're looking at a 1948 football program from Jacksonville State University. On the top row, left to right, the first player, Bill Cassidy, would years later serve as superintendent of the Oxford school system. Next to him is Blackie Heath. On the bottom row, left to right, the second player is Paul Adams, Marshall County High School, Gunnersville. Number 66 on the bottom row, Charlie Seabold of Marshall County High School, Gunnersville. On the next page now, on the top row, left to right, the second player is J.P. Poo-Poo Kane. Years later, he would serve as the longtime coach and principal at Hartselle. Far right, on the top row, Tony Daniels of Marshall County High School, Gunnersville. The uncle of Richard and Brent Lusk of Gunnersville, Tony would become a coach and teacher. Once he was an assistant to Vernon Wells at Albertville, and once an assistant to J.P. Kane at Hartselle. On the bottom row, second from the right, number 60, is our man, Nelson Williams of Marshall County High School and Union Grove. Another player from Marshall County High School, Gunnersville on the roster was Billy Hudson. Later, he would be a head coach at Boaz and Muscle Shoals. Hugh O'Shills was listed on the roster and later would be a big name in high school football in Alabama at Oneonta. Blackie Heath also told us of another Marshall County Wildcat that had been a nifty back in high school, Sokie Walden. The broken ankle he suffered in service affected his try for a comeback at Jacksonville State University. The thrill of victory as a coach on the shoulders of his Emma Sanson Rebels following a victory over Anniston. His teaching and coaching career started in 1949 at Athens as an assistant to Coach Furman Elmore. The coach remembers once at Athens they had 65 of the 96 boys in high school out for football. He spent 1954 through 65 at Emma Sanson, 6 years as the assistant and 6 years as the head coach. 1966 to 67, Blackie was an assistant at Albertville. 1968 through 72, he was the Worth County, Georgia head coach. Here at his last coaching stop, gifts of a new shotgun and a color TV. In his first season there, he led the team to their best one-loss record in Worth County history. Outstanding players coached by Blackie include Brub Hamilton, All-American at UNA, the famous Bobby twins at Emma Sanson, and a couple of other Emma Sanson Rebels were great players at Jacksonville State University. Quarterback Joe Haney, an All-American and Etowah County Hall of Famer, halfback Terry Harris. Jacksonville State selected him in 1982, one of the school's top 100 athletes in the first 100 years, and inducted him into the Jacksonville State Hall of Fame in 1988. Here they are, the Ponies, from 155 to 170 pounds. 3 All-Americans at Jacksonville State under Coach Don Sauls. This was at Blackie's induction into the Gamecock Hall of Fame. Left to right, Terry Hodges, Blackie Heath, John Williams, and to the far right, Coach Don Sauls. Ladies and gentlemen, inductee and Jacksonville State's first All-American football player, George Blackie Heath.
You know, I didn't know I was that good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to stand up here and talk to you a little bit about sports that I went through. Now, I'm not a politician or anything like that, so I'm not going to speak on political things. And I'm certainly not someone who's going to tell Alabama who to get for coach. I'd like to congratulate Coach Allen and all his lieutenants and people that worked for him for a great organization. This Hall of Fame should continue for years and years to come. We're having young people now coming up in sport, young ladies, playing basketball, soccer, and softball, stuff like that. They'll be following us old folks in the Hall of Fame one day. My sports have started, like Bill told you, in a little town in Pineapple, Alabama. Now, we didn't have a junior high coach team, so if you was going out football, you had to go out for the big boys. I started out, like you said, in the 7th grade, but naturally didn't get to play or wasn't expecting to get to play because I was too little. Still am. But our team graduated most of the players in the backfield. In my 8th grade year, I was a first-string halfback weighing about 120 pounds. Now, I'm not bragging, but we didn't have nobody else. I had to play. Sometimes we wouldn't have over 15 or 18 boys out for football. We had to double up and play a half-line scrimmage to get them in shape and get them learning plays and so forth. One thing that I remember strictly, Coach White, this is my junior year now, not my senior. My junior year, Coach White came down and never had visited the school or never had even visited town. But he was in a baseball player and got out of baseball, and they offered him a job coaching our team he took it. We played our arch rival, which was Greenville, Alabama, where I was born at that, back in the days. When we went over there, I stood at the gate and counted 67 football players that they run out on the field. We had 16. Now, you would bet the odds would be that they'd just run us off the field. But when that game was over with, we had them 13-0. Coming to Gunnersville, it was a pleasure because we had enough boys to scrimmage. And I strictly remember one game that we played that Bill's already mentioned about playing the counties. We was a county champion and so forth. Soaker Walden ran on the first play from line of scrimmage 80 yards for a touchdown. Well, I saw a flag go up in there. I said, what in the world? Anyway, the official blew the whistle, motioned for Walden to come back. Soaker come trotting back. And Soaker was the captain that night. He said, Mr. Walden, so-and-so was offside. Your opponent was offside. What do you want, touchdown or 5-yard penalty? Well, everybody thought, well, that's crazy referee, you know, there's something wrong with him. Anyway, Soaker looked at him, and then he'd look up at the other end of the field where he went. He'd look back and look at his field. Directly he said, Mister, said, I just got through running 80 yards. I come back down here 80 yards. I go back up there 80 yards to kick a field goal. I come back down here about 70 yards to kick off again, run down on the kickoff. He said, heck, I'll take the 5-yard penalty. Left Gunnersville, naturally went to Union as a freshman. Got up there, and then these old tough Union boys, most of them played at Tennessee, and the coaches, every one of them, the coaches played at Tennessee. They were mean, they were tough on us. And, but they were square with us. In other words, they fair as they could be with you. But if they told you to do something, you better do it. I looked at the schedule. I said, you mean this team, we got to play this team? And the fellow said, the boy said, yeah. Says, we got to play them. Come to find out, that team was Mississippi State. Now, here we are, a little school about like Howard and Birmingham or Southern Birmingham back then. So, but we went to Mississippi State. They kicked off to us. Our halfback, we had an All-American halfback. He was the fastest man I've ever run against. He could outrun me 10 yards on 100, and I could run it in 10 seconds. So he was fast. They kicked off to us. He caught it on the 4-yard line. When he wound up, he was 96 yards up the other end of the field. We were leading them 7-0 at the halves, 7-0 at the third quarter. At the third quarter, the fourth quarter began, well, they'd already just wore our team out. And even I got to play a little in the fourth quarter as a defensive back. And I remember this great big fullback, a halfback rather, not a fullback, come running down the sideline. And I had a coach, a good coach that taught me, because I played in the secondary and on offense and defense, but secondary, to how to tackle back on the sideline. Don't never let him cut back behind you. If you do, well, you never touch him. And I pushed him out of bounds. Great big rascal. Come to find out, his name, All-American halfback from Mississippi State, Blondie Black. Now, some of you people, older people, might remember him. Blondie Black. He played against Alabama, Auburn. After that, went into the war, as Bill told you, and then finished that, went home in 1940, got home in 1946 on the first day, 1946, January the 1st. Well, messed around a little bit, and Vanny and I went to Jacksonville, and that's when we started out playing football. 46, we had veterans on the team, but they wasn't in shape like I was or anything like that. But we played a 9-game schedule. I think we won 5 or something, or 4 or something. Anyway, it wasn't too good. 1947, that's when we had our best year, undefeated, and last game we played was Florida State. When we went to Florida State, being from Jacksonville, we didn't have an airplane to fly down. We had to ride a bus. Pulled up in front of the hotel. There was about 80 young little darling girls dressed in these pants, shorts pants, and white boots and so forth, coming out to the bus, going to escort us into the hotel. Well, heck, I was sitting on the right side, first door, and I wanted to get out first. Coach Sauls on the other side, he said, "Blackie, come here, come over here." I couldn't understand why he wanted me over there. He wanted to talk football, and all them little girls out there, and I couldn't understand that. And every time he'd say something, I'd get up and start trying to get in the line. They wouldn't let me to go out. Anyway, when it all went out, Coach Sauls and I was the only one left, and there's about 4 of them out there. Well, when we stepped out the door, those girls screamed bloody murder. You could have heard them all over the place, and started running. I couldn't understand it. I looked back, Coach Sauls was holding my hand. I knocked the fire out of him, you know, and realized what reason they were screaming. But we went ahead anyway, played Florida State. They come up the field, it's wide open, making first downs after first down on the kickoff. And I was supposed to call timeout. About that time, they run a play, and one of our boys made them fumble, hit the ball, and they fumbled. We got the ball. It didn't take us about 4 or 5 plays, and we was in the end zone. And that was the ball game. The rest of the time, it wasn't nothing but 3 yards in a cloud of dust and punt. We beat them 7-0. Leaving that, had one more year. I had one more year. We played a 10-game schedule and lost 1 ball game by 14-13. After that, I went into the coaching business, coached 20 and 30 years or so. Anyway, wound up with teachers and coaching 36 and a half years. Retired in 82, moved to Gunnersville, and that's where I've been living ever since and enjoying myself. Ladies and gentlemen, I've always said if somebody's going to give me something and it was worthwhile, I would accept it. So I'll accept the Marshall County Sports Hall of Fame. Thank you.